everybody. How are you all doing today? Sorry for the delay. I kind of dozed off a little bit and just answering a little Discord message. There we go. I'll be hopping on to Jim's stage in just a sec. I just need to do my little salad speech a little bit. Actually, no, I'm gonna skip it. I'm late. It's just about the spoilers. Link down in the description below to buy things and use energy mixes, sleep mixes, shakers, amongst other things. And you can use code Blackwood to get a 10% discount. Man, am I late?
There we go. Hey there, bud.
Hello.
Hey. Okay, 1 second. Let me get you. Let me make sure that have you unmuted on my OBS. There we go. You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just kind of fell asleep on my chair, that's all.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I was kind of running late myself, so you know, I was a little worried that I was going, are you gonna be able to, like, you know, step on in and join me on this? Because, you know, I was kind of like, okay, I'm starting at 2 o'clock. It's normally when we do Unreal. Normally I have the stream up and running, you know, running at 1 o'clock. So you have, like, you know, you're like comfortable in that, you know, I'm already like streaming. You're aware that I'm active, so you know, there's no confusion on your part that, you know, hey, I'm active. But I'm glad that you were able to join me.
Yeah. I like heard a little like notification on my headset and that woke me up.
Okay. Understandable. So, I'm, you know, I was just letting people know that you know, I was a little, you know, I'm being a little crazy right at this moment in time because I was able to find a adapter for my second monitor, so I finally got the second monitor back up and running. So that's nice. So now I don't have to worry too much about like I can keep an eye on chat right in front of me, but you know, the OBS is, you know, over on my left hand side, so you know, it's much like how you have your laptop, I think, your computer and your laptop set up.
Yep.
So
hello Cameron, how you doing?
So okay, so shall we get started on some Unreal Engine studying?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, oh, pardon me, I gotta blow my nose. Be right back.
Right now, I'm just gonna be doing for a little bit Unreal study session with Strange Roy Jim, and about like 45 minutes I will like cut it, go get something to eat, and then come back for Rebel Galaxy. That's what I normally do when it comes to the going through these documentations.
Alright. Sorry about that. Yeah, and I'll be doing some after Unreal for me. I'll be doing some video uploads and then some more Warframe later on tonight. So, but let's see. We had finished off. We did the normalize 3D stereo sounds. But we did not go through the attenuation air absorption, right?
No.
So, okay. Did you get any kind of, comments or messages or anything like that on any of your videos yet, or
Not
no?
yet. Not
Okay.
yet.
I figured I'd, ask before we really get started. So, if there was ever like a comment, posted to our videos for Unreal or anything like that, then we can like address it like right at the very beginning. So, or like, kind of go over it at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But um, yeah, but I haven't received anything either, so I figured um, we'll wait for later then. Well, I mean, when one comes, if anything comes, then we'll address it then. But for now, yeah. Okay. So, attenuation air absorption. Let's get started here. This section defines how an algorithm that attempts to model the effect air absorption has on the sound behaves. Namely, that higher frequencies decay quicker than lower frequencies relative to distance. Really? Okay, interesting. Um, I'm curious as to how that would be the case. Hmm. Maybe because the higher frequencies expend or is using a lot more energy, so therefore might uh, dissipate faster. Maybe.
I'm not entirely sure.
Hmm. Not sure. You can define the distance range within which the filter will be applied, and then use the low-pass cutoff frequency settings to determine how much filtering you want. The
Another
filter will.
crossing fight. Yeah, don't worry about it. I don't have those alerts active either. I haven't had time to set those up. Hopefully, eventually, I do have the V-Stream alerts up soon.
Cool. Um, the the filter will interpolate between the min and max cutoff frequency as you move between the min and max distances, as well as a low pass filter for modeling air absorption. You also have a high pass filter that could be used to reduce the perceived size of the sound relative to distance. Okay. Once again, we're dealing with low pass and high pass filters, whatever those are. Not sure.
Not sure myself.
Um, it's meant, according to this, as well as low pass filter for modeling air absorption. So maybe that's what they are meant for, to to determine whether or not the air will absorb like higher frequencies more, and then like leave the low frequencies able to pass through easier, or maybe the exact reverse. Let the high frequencies go further, and let the low frequencies kind of die out quicker. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure what the filters are all about, but um, let's see. Anything else there that we can maybe get an educated discussion about, or figure out a little bit more? Uh, I I don't really see anything. Any, Anything that you might be able to figure?
Not sure. I might need to look up if something explains what low pass and high pass is actually is. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how that filter even works.
yeah, it's okay. I mean, maybe they will explain it later, but obviously we have hit roadblocks before concerning this, so and we haven't really gotten any answers concerning that, so or at least nothing that really like. It'd probably be great if they had like some form of like linking, like, hey, here's a keyword that you guys really should know about, and it will link to like a definition or something along those lines, you know. So, or some like little pop-up that you can just kind of put your mouse over and it will like show like a little window saying like, hey, this is what this is all about. I don't know. But obviously they don't do that, so oh well. Guess we'll just move on.
Yeah.
In the image below, the green circle represents the min distance, and the red circle the max distance. Any filter settings will be applied and interpolated between these two distances. Okay, so in other words, anything outside of it wouldn't necessarily hear anything because the air absorption would basically reduce it down to 0.
Pretty much.
So, and obviously the air absorption will reduce down the sound volume as it proceeds outwards. Although, if you had, like, say, animals that are, more in tune with hearing at, lower, higher frequencies, then you might need to have, um, in a sense, like different sounds, like maybe different like sound filters or something along those lines that would, one you would use for like maybe humans, and another you want to use for animals in a way. Not quite sure how you'd be able to really go about doing that, but you know.
No, I don't even know if it's even possible.
True, indeed. Um, well, I don't know. I would figure that it would be possible. It's just um, it might be a little bit of a mess because like you would have to have the um, how the circles are kind of surrounding that said object there. Then you'd have to have something pretty much like right on top of the exact same location, you know, that has like different circles from that, and you as a developer would have to know the difference between the two. Like for example, if like a new programmer came in and was like on, what the hell is this? What the hell is these two different, um, attenuation, audio, and air absorption settings. What the hell? Why even bother with these? You know, and decides to kill off one of them, then you're the, then like say dogs wouldn't be able to hear anything at all, or have like different settings for it to, I don't know. But I wouldn't to be too surprised if you can set it up, because you
I
can
guess you
set up
could
like different.
use like priorities on it. If you put one on top of the other, like you could set one to have a higher priority so that you simulate it.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that like like dogs have a higher sense of hearing, right, than humans do. So, or at least, but I don't know what the exact process is for that, or like what the range is overall. But I would imagine that their minimum and maximum would be um, larger overall than what a human would
Hmm.
have, right? So you'd probably want to have like two of them, two kind of, I guess, classes stacked on top of each other in the same exact spot. One for human hearing and one for dog hearing, for example, right? If you wanted to kind of try to simulate that. And then you have the human only able to hear the human class hearing sound, and the dog would only be hearing the dog sound class thing. So, which we probably could try to work and get it to work, but obviously that's a lot of you know potential work there. Um, but I mean, if we want to have it realistic like that, then we might want to consider it. But that's of course if we ever do a game along those lines, which we may or may not do,
Hmm. Depends on the game we
right?
make.
Exactly. But I mean, it gives a rough idea as to what the potentials anyway. So okay, enable air absorption. Okay, this property is used to enable or disable air absorption model. If true, the sound will be processed using a low-pass filter whose cutoff point varies relative to the listener's distance from the sound's source, as configured by the settings below. If false, then the sound will go unprocessed. Unprocessed? What do you mean unprocessed? I mean it just won't be active at all? Or unprocessed in that it will never have a low pass filter and it will just kind of continue for as long as you want it to. I'm kind of leaning towards the latter there, but you know, I don't know. They're not really defining that very much.
Hmm. I'm not sure. Now we don't know what low pass filter does to begin with, so.
True, true. Well, I mean, if the low pass filter is meant to like do an error absorption, supposedly, maybe, again, I don't know. Then, uh, as I was, as I mentioned before a couple days back, the sound waves when it travels, um, it loses energy due to trying to pass through air, and it loses energy just by heat. Expends heat. While for its energy, right? Um, so, um, but that's why sound uh still kind of hear like a slight sound of those airplanes, you know, going to and fro. So, but the sound is so low from where I live comparatively. Now, if I was like living right next door to the airport, then I'd be hearing it like, shaking my house or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Um, because the sound is just so great, the how loud that sound is. But because of the distance, it loses energy, it loses, because of the air, it loses energy based on the heat, so it doesn't sound as loud. If there wasn't any air absorption, then, you know, natural for me hearing it just as loud here as it was, would be like next to the airport, then yikes.
Hmm.
um, we'd have to basically create well, I mean, if there was no air absorption whatsoever anywhere on the planet, then that would mean that the entire planet would be just deafening, right?
Mm.
Because the loudest sounds would never, well, obviously, it might lose energy due to heat and stuff like that, but I mean, if there was no air absorption whatsoever, then the sound would just be like constant no matter what. So the loudest like explosions and like would just be reverberating throughout the entire world and just kind of adding to it and adding to it and adding to it, and it's like, ooh, wow, okay, you know. Yeah, potentially, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not a physicist or anything along those lines, so I wouldn't really know exactly if that's true. But whatever. But it would be interesting.
Mm.
Alright. Minimum distance range. This property defines the minimum distance from the sound source at which the filter should be applied. You should experiment with different settings to find the point that best suits the sound you are using, but a good starting point would be based on the inner range of your attenuation distance settings. Okay, so um, if we're using, if the low pass filter is kind of referring to the air absorption, then it's basically saying, hey, if you're this close to the object minimum distance, then you're going to be hearing it at full power no matter what. There's no amount of distance is going to reduce down the amount of noise that you're hearing from it, right? So like if you're inside a factory, it's really difficult to not hear how loud a factory is unless you get further away from it, right?
Right.
So eventually you do get to a point where you get further and further away from it, then it basically says, okay, here's where you put in the low pass filter, the air absorption, maybe, I would imagine. That's what I'm kind of gathering from this minimum distance range. Do you agree with that, or well, of course, we still, again, we don't know what the low pass filter is, but do you
Yeah.
agree?
I guess we'll know for sure once we give it a try.
Yeah. Max distance range. This property defines the maximum distance from the sound source at which the filter should be applied. You should experiment with different settings to find the point that best suits the sound you are using, but a good starting point would be based off the fall-off range of your attenuation distance settings. Now I'm kind of wondering, are we good?
I'm kind
Alright,
of
when
guessing like the minimum is, looking at the pictures, the green circle, while the maximum is the red circle. Like maybe that's
right.
what you're defining with those.
But yeah, that's what I'm assuming based off of the main topic right at the moment is the attenuation air absorption. So we're kind of going through if you look above the picture, there's like a screenshot of all the settings: enable air absorption, minimum distance, max distance, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Um,
Beyond, like, this is
so
saying, okay, how far do you want to hear it, and okay, where do you just want to cut it off, the audio completely?
yeah,
Which would depend on, again, on our level design there.
yeah. Um, but it does. I do have a question here. Now again, I'm just speaking out loud, so obviously, if you don't have an answer, it's understandable. Um, But you know, if you can think of a solution, then maybe we can figure this out. But um, so I'm looking at this and it says max distance range for the, you know, the attenuation air absorption, right? Um, a good starting point would be based off the fall off range of your attenuation distance settings. So there's something different between the distance air absorption and the distance the attenuation air absorption and the attenuation distance settings. So um so that's why it's like I'm kind of confused along those lines. Like, are we dealing with like two different like max settings concerning the attenuation, and therefore, um, could we get, you know, a scenario where the air absorption kind of stops prior to the attenuation distance settings, so it basically stops absorbing after that point, but you can still kind of hear it? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that my thought line here?
Hmm.
Am I, you know, am I maybe overthinking it a little bit? Like, will the air absorption basically, you know, absorb everything no matter what? So even if the attenuation distance settings might be further out, the air absorption will just wipe out the sound no matter what, clear it out, so you won't really even hear anything beyond it anyway? Or something else going on there? What do you think? Do you have any thought lines on that at all?
Hmm. Let me see.
I mean, if you don't know, you know, or if
I
you
can
like, you're like,
I can only like guess like past that max distance. If the cutoff is still past that point, maybe the volume is gonna be just very low but consistent.
maybe, like
Up
maybe
until
like a
that
low,
cutoff point that you configure.
like maybe to like just like a low rumble or something like that,
Yeah,
like.
like something like that. Yeah, but just like very low and consistent. Like its volume doesn't change until you reach that max distance.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that myself. I was, you know, um, obviously we'd probably want to try to test that out at some point, but you know, again, that might be dependent on the game. But it'd be interesting to see what they do with that, you know. Uh, you know,
I guess we'd have to test it to
and
be
if,
sure.
yeah, and even then, you know, we ourselves might be like, we might confuse ourselves a little bit and go, wait, are we actually hearing a difference in volume or something like that? You know, are we hearing like a consistent volume at this point? You know, that kind of thing. You know, we might actually like confuse ourselves as well along those lines. You know, because sometimes our brain might play tricks on us and go, you know, no, you know, you're definitely hearing a lower volume as you further away you go, you know, blah blah blah. So, I don't know. Um, you know, our mind could be, you know, potentially playing tricks on us a little bit on that. So, hard to say. Hard to say for me. Hmm. Well, shall we move on? Or
So,
do you want to kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
think about that a little bit more?
No, let's move on.
Okay. Low pass cutoff frequency minimum. Uh, this might actually kind of tell us a little bit more about the low pass and high pass. So
Maybe, yeah.
otherwise, I'd almost say like, maybe we should just go ahead and skip this. But this might actually tell us a little bit more about the filters. This property defines the cutoff frequency of the low pass filter when at the minimum distance range. You should experiment with different settings to find the value that best suits the sound you're using, but given that the reality there is little air absorption effect when in close proximity to the sound, higher values here work well. Okay. So it definitely feels as though they are really focused on the low pass filter being associated with an air absorption effect. They're really kind of driving that home a little bit.
Yep.
And, again, whether or not that's true or not, not sure, but it definitely feels like they're basically saying, whenever you see a low pass filter, you can basically replace it with a air absorption. But I don't know, if they were, if that was indeed if that's indeed the right interpretation of it, then why even use air absorption at all? Or, have the low pass filter. Why even bother with that? Why not just call it air absorption filter? So, I don't know. I'm not quite sure the difference there, but
I'm not sure either.
What's the point of having a different word if it, let's face it, a lot of us create words just to try to make things easier, or for like different meanings and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe it meant something way back in the day, like when they first started making mixers or something like that, and now they analyzed it more and said, this is more about air absorption or something. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Alright. Low pass cutoff frequency max. This property defines the cutoff frequency of the low pass filter when at the max distance range as defined above. You should experiment with different settings to find the value that best suits the sound you're using, but given that in reality there is more air absorption effect when further away from the sound, lower values here work well. Okay. Well, I mean, more air absorption effect the further away from the sound. I mean, the wording there is a little off because
Yeah.
Air, on one hand you would think, hey, the air pressure is consistent around the entire world, and therefore it should be the same amount of consistent air absorption no matter where you go, and therefore there wouldn't necessarily be more air absorption effect. It'd be more of a consistent air absorption effect the further away you go from the sound, right?
Right.
But here's the thing, at the same time, air isn't exactly consistent either. Otherwise we wouldn't really have any cold fronts or warm fronts or anything along those lines. When you have weather systems kind of passing through, the clouds rolling and all that kind of jazz. I mean, that's just like, what is it? Warm air flowing towards cold air. kind of effect going on. So there's just the flowing of air. So you might have a little bit more of a higher concentration in one particular area. Um, you also have higher elevation. So at a higher elevation, you wouldn't have really any air whatsoever at a higher elevation than say like, at sea level, right? So if you were to do say like um for example, let's say you create a game and the you have like a battle on a like a floating castle way up in the sky, right? Well, there wouldn't necessarily be a lot of air to absorb the sounds, right? So yeah. Hmm. Which makes me wonder, does the sound travel further in up in the other upper atmosphere or less?
I'm not sure. And getting back into
Because I
game
mean,
design, like I can think of a few uses to making it higher, and a few, and some when making it lower on the actual maximum cutoff. I can think of a few uses for that. Especially
yeah,
if we're making like a fantasy world, and yeah, real war, real war would really not matter.
yeah. Well, it makes me kind of wonder. It's like, on one hand, you kind of need air in order to actually hear, right? You
Yeah.
know, the sound waves are kind of traveling through the air, but on the flip side of that, the sound waves doesn't like lose energy in the low air as well. So it's very, I'm not quite sure on the physics of that. you know, um, you know,
Like
I would
supposedly
have to actually
the
talk.
less the air there is, the less you can hear. Supposedly.
Right, but the sound wouldn't necessarily diminish in due to air absorption if there's like less air for it to absorb the energy from the sound waves. So would basically the sound kind of travel in the upper atmosphere further?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say like because there are less air particles to bounce amongst each other, it would probably fall off faster.
Yeah. I don't know. One of those things where it's like, boy, on one hand, it's like, that's an interesting idea, but at the same time, it's like, you know, um, obviously, this is getting into real world physics that we may never even touch upon in our game. So, but still, it might be something that we might need to consider, you know, who knows, maybe 5, 10 games from now, you never know.
If we make a game
And
based like on Earth, then yeah, maybe.
yeah, you never know. We may do something along those lines, or an Earth-like atmosphere. Because let's face it. I mean, even in like fantasy games, like if you like a do D&D session or something like that, you always place the heroes in an Earth-like you know world in some fashion or another. Like, you know, it's very rare to have like a dungeon master that will basically say, "Okay, we're on a planet that is all volcanic. Good luck with the atmosphere. There's no air," or something like that. It's like, wait, what? you know, how do you how do you deal with a game like that? That kind of thing. That requires a lot more physics than a regular gamer might be able to handle. So I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. So uh, moving on.
Yeah.
Uh, So the high pass cutoff frequency min. This property defines the cutoff frequency of the high pass filter, wherever that is, when at the minimum distance range as defined above. You should experiment with different settings to find the value that best suits the sound you're using, but subtle values work best here for the most part. Given that you will likely want the sound to feel large when up close, lower values here work well. I wonder if the high pass and low pass filter is basically this in a sense the same thing, like the air absorption, but maybe you have maybe they're kind of talking about like high pass for high pressure and low pass for low pressure, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking out loud here. I don't, you know. Trying to find, you know, some, you know, thinking it through to maybe try to find some semblance of truth. But obviously, if anybody has any information, please feel free to give it to us. Please feel free to put it in our chat right now during the streams, or in the comment sections when we upload these videos. That would be fantastic. So, because that might help out, you know, our understanding of sound a little bit better, and therefore we might not necessarily be completely confused if we're like trying to tackle a sound problem in our game, you know, in the future, and suddenly we're like, but how we're trying to find this exact sound, how are we able to get this, you know, we don't understand, or, you know, maybe we're like changing the value, but we're not really understanding why it works. So, and it's better to understand why it works,
Yeah.
than just kind of going, I'm just gonna change settings here and there and hope that it works. It's like that doesn't really help us.
Nope.
So, okay. Let me get through these last 3 sections here to get to the attenuation listener focus, and then we'll cut it off there. Sound good?
Sure.
So the high pass cutoff frequency max. This property defines the cutoff frequency of the high pass filter when at the max distance range as defined above. You should experiment with different settings to find the value that best suits the sound you're using. The subtle values work best here, blah blah blah. For the most part, make your sound feel smaller in size and less dominant. When at a distance, higher values here work well. I do question why they're saying sound feels smaller in size and the sound feels large. Not quite sure exactly what they mean exactly on that. Maybe the sound waves? But how does it feel large or feel small? It doesn't. I don't know. Kind of confused about that. But moving on.
Yeah.
Or do you have any like maybe potential educated guesses along that?
Not
lines,
really,
or?
no.
Okay. Enable log frequency scaling. This property is used to enable or disable the application of a logarithmic scale to the filter cutoff frequency values as they are interpolated relative to the listener position. Depending on your settings, you may find the default linear scale produces some extreme and unnatural sounding results. Yeah. Linear scale would probably do that. Excuse me. If so, you can enable the log scale, which should smooth out the changes as it will produce a perpetually linear frequency swap. Huh? Wait, what? Okay, that section's a little confusing. That kind of threw me off a little bit there. Not sure what the ending of that statement is referring to, really.
Not sure.
Alright, well, and we can guess all we want, but we're probably going to need some help on this section for anybody that knows more about sound design.
Yeah.
The large frequency scaling. I mean, obviously, we know about logarithmic and linear scale for the most part, but why it does the perpetually linear frequency sweep is kind of confusing for me, but oh. Moving on.
Yeah.
Absorption method. This property is used to determine whether you want to use either the inbuilt scaling function, log or linear from above, or whether you want to create your own custom curve on how the interpolation is scaled over the filtering distance. You have two choices. Linear. This uses the inbuilt scaling function, either linear or logarithmic, depending on the property above. I mean, wouldn't that be three choices? Linear, logarithmic, or custom. So this seems a bit... This already feels a little odd, but... Where we have custom. This enables you to create your own custom scaling curves for the low pass and high pass filters independently. So, if the low pass and high pass filters are air absorption, and maybe it is, in terms of like the low pressure and high pressure scales, maybe, I'm just again speaking out loud, then maybe you want to have like a really steep drop off for low filter, meaning like, as soon as that sound goes off, it, suddenly drops. So you have to be like really close to that, to that sound before, completely drops off and you can barely hear it anymore. Or, you can have like a high pressure where it's like, you have all the air in the world and you can hear it for miles, blah, blah, blah. And just, you have a, what's the visual from up above? You have more of a log reverse, style of high pass filter or something like that. I don't know. But okay. So that's the end of the attenuation air absorption. I guess tomorrow we'll continue on with the attenuation listener focus.
Yeah. Still quite a bit still left on attenuation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, we are getting a fair amount of information from it, although a lot of it's still very confusing.
Yeah.
But obviously, depending on how realistic we want the sounds to be, then like if we were doing like an arcade game, like say Pac-Man or Galaga or Space Invaders or something like that, we wouldn't really care about this.
No.
You know, we wouldn't really care about like, hey, our sound is, dropping off or something like that. I mean, we could try to do something along those lines. It'd be a little weird on those style arcade games, but I mean, we could try to do that. Matter of fact, someone did create a game that is very that's styled in the in like in a Pac-Man style game, but they put a horror element to it, a 3D Pac-Man style, but when you're traveling around, it the you can kind of hear the monsters getting closer to you if you're getting closer to it, kind of thing. Um, so, what was it? What was that game called? It's like,
Sounds
I think
familiar
it's
to me.
I think it's like Dark Descent or something like that.
No, I don't think that was it.
Um, let's see. Um, Pac-Man horror. Well, that shows me a lot of really this creepy Dark Deception. That's what it's called.
Oh, Deception. That one. That would make more sense.
Yeah. Basically, in the game Dark Deception, um, they give you um, like 3D Pac-Man levels in a sense, where um, you're basically in the eyes of Pac-Man, okay, and you're going around collecting all the pellets that are around the map, right? Um, but in the very first level, you're basically being chased by these, by you know, evil monkeys that you know, they look like the monkeys, the toy monkeys with the symbols. They go, but in this case, they are like carrying knives coming after you. So, um, and that's like the first level. So, you know, and the maps are, you know, pretty large overall. Um, so definitely an interesting game, I must say. It's just the, uh, like, on one hand, it's like, I understand why they went about doing it, but on the other hand, it doesn't really, it kind of sucks as well, in that, basically they had every level of that game, the Dark Deception, is like a DLC. So if you want to move on to the next level, you have to purchase their next like DLC level of it.
Hmm.
And on one hand, it's like, okay, that makes sense. They're putting a lot of time and effort into, making the level, testing it out, making sure that it works properly and stuff like that. They're adding new art assets and stuff like that to each of the new levels. So I mean, in some ways, it is a new DLC. It's a new um, it's a new style of game. Different, might have like different mechanics to it, different monster mechanics to it, and stuff like that. So on one hand, it's like slightly different, but on the other hand, um, uh, from what I understand, they don't really um, they charge a lot for those levels, so it doesn't like invite people to really want to buy those DLCs. Like if they were like super cheap, like you know $1 or something like that, then people might want to purchase them a little bit more. I would figure,
Yeah.
because you know you're basically saying, hey, um, you know, you bought the main game. Thanks for that. Here's a little bit, you know, of extra content for you, for, you know, for cheap, right?
Yeah.
Um, but from what I understand, the DLCs are a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
Here,
Which
let
in most
me.
cases it shouldn't be. Like, if it's gonna be expensive, you better be giving them a lot. Because if you're making just expenses just for a small DLC, which is it's just a few things, then yeah, it's not worth it.
Okay, so the first level is actually free.
Yeah.
The first chapter that you can play is free. So I mean that's pretty nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, pretty awesome. The You could purchase the I guess what they call the Dark Deception Complete, which I guess you know includes all their everything, like even like you know future levels as well. Um, but right now it looks like they have 4 additional chapters after the first one. Like you play the free game, which is an interesting way of like enticing people in, right? You
Yeah.
know,
They get a
you bring out
taste
a
of
free
it.
game, you get a taste of the game, and if you really enjoy it, then hey, you know, maybe, you know, put some money in towards, you know, helping them out with the additional chapters along those lines. It's a nice enticing method of um you know, it's often a good strategy in certain cases with games, right? You
Right.
know, you give them a little bit of taste, like a demo, and you basically say, you know, hey, if you want the rest of the game, you got to pay this much money. Um, and each of the chapters is $7.
Yeah.
So, um,
Which is what I
you
mean.
know,
Like, each
chapter,
one better have something that's like worth it. Like, that makes it more interesting than the demo. Otherwise, you just
yeah,
buying a reskinned level.
true,
They gotta add like enough to make each chapter different.
yeah, yeah. Which I mean, they did. Um, but it's like they had like the different, you know, they changed up how, or at least I've only seen like now I've personally only seen people play the first chapter and the second chapter, and that's it. Okay. Um, I've never seen anybody play the third or fourth chapters. But at the same time, you know, maybe I'll play it at some point. You know, um, that it'd be an interesting or you know Halloween game maybe. Um, but the um, you know the fact that it's like you know yeah, $7 per chapter. So right now the grand total it would come out to about $21 if you were to purchase um, the second through fourth chapters, right? And right now the Deception Complete is $20. So you're only saving like about $1 right now.
Yeah.
Um, Now if it looks like um chapter 5 still haven't come out yet, according to them. Or at least doesn't look like they've released it yet. But I mean,
No, they are
if
planning
they
on
say
releasing
that
it
this,
this year, but they don't have an exact date yet.
yeah, Um, yeah. So, but I mean, if that one's also $7, then and they keep the complete version at the $20, then obviously the complete, would be a
Definitely
would be
worth
a
it.
better deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll be getting more sales
So
from there.
right. Um, but I mean, for everything that they've done with the game, you know, um, you know, it doesn't look too bad if um, you know, well, obviously the first level is interesting. Um, but um, but yeah, if you want to try out the other levels, that's indeed interesting. But that game right there, um, that would be using the sound design, you know, a little bit more, uh, based off of like um, it's basically taking Pac-Man, putting it in a 3D level, and then really enhancing the audio to really, you know, enhance the, spooky feel of the game. So, otherwise,
Yeah, when it comes
you
to
know,
horror,
um,
audio can make or break the game.
indeed, indeed. So, but, uh, um, let me kick you out so you can go get some food, my friend,
Yeah, I need to get something to eat and prepare for my
and
game.
you enjoy your game tonight. Have fun, and I will catch you next time. Okay?
Right?
All right, man. Take care.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I am out of the stage. And yeah. Jim was watching Matrix. Which one? There's 4 Matrix movies that I know of. And then there's Animatrix, which is the animations. Uh, as for your previous question there, Cameron, about the Terminator and Levy, I wouldn't really know because I don't really know what you're talking about there, so I don't know how to answer that question. So far, I haven't watched the 4th movie of the Matrix. I haven't gone around watching that. Maybe because I felt like it was an unnecessary movie. The 3rd one had finished just fine. And sorry about the Chihuahua going bananas. Well, what can you expect from a Chihuahua? As for what whatever player said, you'd be surprised that in Argentina we have a meal called niño envuelto, which translated directly to English means wrapped children. And that's an actual food that's called like that. Sorry I wasn't directly answering because I don't like interrupting people unless necessary. And, well, I just was talking to Jim about that whole audio design stuff and about that game that is pretty interesting, mind you. I have the first chapter, but I don't have any of the other chapters. Once I get the other chapters, I might actually play it on stream. On the month of horror, of course. I'm a coward, so playing horror games, I would say the month of horror is kind of hard for me. And on the month of horror is just as hard. It's just having an excuse to force myself to play it. I want to stay on theme. I haven't thought of a theme for Valentine's yet, because I don't have any games that would be fitting for that. Or Easter. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna stop this stream here, and I'm gonna go get myself some food. I don't like eating on stream. That's why I'm gonna close this one down. Now I'm gonna come back in roughly speaking an hour to start playing Rebel Galaxy. And there we can talk some more if you guys want to join me then. So let me think. Right. For those that are watching the VOD, but if you understand things from that we were watching, like reading through just now about the attenuation sound that we didn't understand, or maybe we understood it wrong, leave it on the comment below, like what it actually meant, or maybe if you have a link that explains this sort of things better, leave it down in the comments below the link and we'll have a look at it. And we'll talk about it next time we cover Unreal. So, anyways, for this stream, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in a little bit. Bye bye for now!